I hope you can hear me. I'm so sorry, Erica, but I can't hear you, and I don't know how to turn on the microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you now. I'm so sorry about this.
No, it's me. You were so awesome. Trust me, if you yeah, there's no doubt that I am technically challenged. And so thank you for rolling with me.
Okay, no problem. We can start anytime again.
Yeah, we'll just start over. And I want to just say again, I want to welcome everybody to UFO Classified. I've been doing this show almost every Friday for 7 years. I love it. I want to thank Mario for being my right hand man who supports me. I want to thank Peter Shelley, all the wonderful listeners that I have that ask thoughtful and critical questions. You've been with me on this discovery process, and it's been a journey. But I will tell you, I'm really, really grateful to all of you. I want to thank my Patreons and people that get in and donate to Super Chat. But tonight is going to be really cool because I have somebody here that I've been following for a long time. And it has been interesting to see, first of all, how forthright he is about his, being involved with people, going along a route and then discovering that what he was looking into wasn't necessarily factual. And I really have to say that I commend anybody that has the integrity to do that, because this is a field full of landmines. And so, Norio, I'm so grateful that you are here tonight, because I've been, like I was mentioning before we started the show, I've been geeking out on your videos.
I see my crazy videos, okay?
I love it. Well, first of all, you're a musician. And so let's talk about that, because I am a musician as well. And I was a professional singer for 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love it. And maybe sometime when I get down to your neck of the woods, we can do a little jam session.
No question about it.
And so when did you get involved in music?
Well, I got involved in music in 1961 when I was a high school student. I started just getting into rock and roll piano, and at that time I tried to play like Jerry Lee Lewis. That was in 1960 when I was in high school, and most of my high school classmates at that time were into rock and roll music, and I so some guy showed me how to play the basic rock and roll style piano as was played by Jerry Lee Lewis and others, and so that's how I got into it, and I joined many groups when I was in high school, and so I have of course changed the directions in my music over the years, and now I even try to play what I call cosmic type music.
I like that. And I mean, you've been, for a while, I mean, you were playing a lot of country.
Yes, I still like country western music, the classic kind, and I still do about 8 or 10 gigs a month at various retirement homes and nursing facilities, skilled nursing facilities, and all kinds of senior apartments and so on. And this is one of my greatest joys right now, to make people happy, and especially to the shut-ins. And so I enjoy it, and they even give me gas money plus something.
You know what? That makes me happy because I know when I've had gigs and I've played retirement homes, that has been such a wonderful joy. I remember a New Year's Eve gig that I had, and I was playing with my jazz band, and it was so fun to watch everybody get up and dance, like they hadn't danced in 50 years. And it was just, they knew every word to the song, and it was just like music is such a powerful thing. And no matter where you are in your life, it just for a brief moment it kind of allows you to forget all of the problems that you have and just enjoy. I just think it's really powerful.
Exactly. You said it so right. So I can't get away from music because it's part of my life. And so that's how it is.
That's so cool. I for a little while, because I was gigging. I started singing, studying classical voice when I was 20, or not 25, 16, if I could get that straight. And then I started at the University of Utah with some professional teachers up there. And then I did the choir thing, and we toured Europe and Asia, and joined a band when I was 18 and did the band thing for a long, long time. And I got to the point where I was pretty burned out by it, and so I took a break, and then I started painting. And now I still love painting, but it's like I've been dusting off the vocal cords. I've been writing music. In fact, last night I got my guitar out, and I've got a couple percussion instruments, and I just wrote music. And it's really cathartic to do. And I think when you have that in your blood, you can't get away from it, and it's a really important part of just being grounded and happy.
Exactly. Exactly. You said it so right.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's so cool. I've been, yeah, like I said, I've been geeking out on all of your videos, and I love that you incorporate the music and you're showing people all of that. And so, what was, like, if you could think of your favorite gig, what would that be?
Well, my favorite gig was when I played on on a stage right next to Area 51 back in 2005. And it was an unforgettable moment. I played lots of cosmic wave type music and even country music. It was the 50th anniversary of the establishment of Area 51, and a whole bunch of people got together and celebrated the 50th anniversary of the establishment of Area 51. And this was in 2005, and there were about at least about 60 people there, and we had barbecue and so on, and we talked about all kinds of things, Area 51 and UFOs, and at night, that's when I started playing cosmic music. And so we were right next to the perimeter line at Area 51 on Groom Lake Road. And so, the security guards were watching us, and they probably enjoyed the music.
I bet they did. I mean, it's so desolate, out there. It's beautiful. I think the landscape is just stark and quite stunning. But I'm sure that they did enjoy that, and I'm sure that they get a kick out of some of the goings ons out by the perimeter of Area 51.
Yeah,
And I want to get into, because you started music in 1961, and wasn't that the same year that you also kind of dove into the UFO subject?
exactly true. So In 1961, I was just a young kid and in a high school, freshman. And so that's when I started getting interested in UFOs because I grew up, and as a child, I used to hear my father telling me of his memorable sighting that he said took place one summer in 1947 while he was night fishing in the Bay of Yokohama, Japan. And he clearly stated that he had seen something strange, a greenish ball of fire slowly maneuvering over the Bay of Yokohama, and he stated that he felt that it did a movement that was to him was some kind of intelligently controlled movement, and so he used to tell me when I was just a kid at the dinner table, and my mother was kind of skeptical about it, and my sister is just, she didn't know what to think about it. So I grew up in that kind of a family, and so when I started going to high school in the early 1960, 1960, um, I really started, getting interested in the deeper study of this UFO phenomenon. And so I joined a lot of groups while I was in Japan when I was in high school. I joined groups such as aerial phenomena research organizations and NICAP and others, and started subscribing to newsletters and so on. So by the time I graduated from high school in 1963, I was quite familiar with the goings on American ufology, even though I was living. But after I graduated from that international school, which was in the city of Yokohama, I attended next year a university in Tokyo called the Sophia International University, and in 1964, that was the very memorable year. In 1964, I was just reading an English language newspaper at the lounge in the university, and I noticed that there was a curious article in the middle of that newspaper saying that a police officer sees saucers sitting on sand, and it came from a place that was completely unknown to me. It came from a place called Socorro, New Mexico, which I had never heard of. And this was in April of 1964. And that article really impressed me, and I really got into this urge to investigate further this strange incident. And so, by coincidence or not, and I, of course, don't believe in coincidence, but the following year in 1965, I received a scholarship from a college in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that was miraculous. And so in 1965, I came here to this land of enchantment, the state of New Mexico, in 1965 to attend this college. And but my studies were so busy that I didn't have a chance to talk to Officer Lonnie Zamora. But fortunately, in 2008, after my wife and I moved back from Los Angeles to Albuquerque, I had a chance to talk to Mr. Lonnie Zamora on the telephone from our residence in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, and I was so happy. He talked to me on the telephone, and he told me exactly how he saw this strange egg-shaped object about 300 feet in front of him, and his account was very, very believable, and he was such a great, polite gentleman, even though he was already a senior citizen by the time I called him for the first time. But so I have no doubt that Mr. Lonnie Zamora did actually see exactly what he said he saw, an egg shaped object standing on its tripod about 300 feet in front of him during daylight, just outside the small town of Socorro, New Mexico. And this incident was one of the, and still is today, even today, it's considered one of the most credible, most investigated UFO incidents in American history.
It's such an amazing it's an amazing case, and it's funny. I have an archive here that I've been creating over the years, and I was looking through some of that the other day, and I found in Dr. James McDonald's file that Androffel did. I mean, it's massive, but there were actually two pictures from Socorro right after that this allegedly happened, and it was such a gem to find those pictures. It's just so cool, and you've got those iconic cases, that just seem to live on, and that's really neat that you had the opportunity to speak with him, and that's important.
Definitely. And so that was in 1964. And that was a long time ago. But eventually, from Albuquerque, I moved to Phoenix, Arizona in 1973 during the height of the so called UFO wave that took place in 1973. And I settled down in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was teaching high school, believe it or not, high school Spanish in a public high school just outside of Phoenix. So that was in 1973 at the height of, a UFO wave.
And cattle mutilations. I mean, that was
That's right. That,
prominent back then.
that was an amazing period. So I lived in Arizona for like 8 years, and during which time, besides teaching high school Spanish, I started joining a country western band in Phoenix, Arizona, and I spent a lot of time touring Indian reservations in Canada with this band called the Johnny White Cloud Country Western Band. So those were memorable years in Phoenix, but the most memorable year while living in Phoenix was in 1975 when I received a fascinating letter from my mother, who I told you before was skeptical about UFOs and so on. And in this letter that I received in 1975 from my mother from Japan, in this excited letter that she wrote to me, she claimed she saw not a UFO, but she clearly stated that she saw a flying saucer with a dome attached on top, simply hovering for a couple of seconds over a crowded railroad station in Yokohama, Japan, around noontime when there were lots of people. And so she was so excited about her sighting, and I definitely believe that she saw a flying saucer. Now, what happened was as she and her grandson got off the train and came down from the steps of the train station towards the street where she lived. While she was walking on the street towards her home, suddenly something told her to turn around and look back towards the station, at which time she did. And she saw, lo and behold, this silverish, metallic flying saucer, just like the ones you see in science fiction movies or even in comics, with a dome on top. She clearly saw it, and momentarily she was so astonished, but she quickly turned to the grandson to turn back and look at the station. And at that instant, that flying saucer totally vanished, totally dematerialized. And my belief is that she did see a flying saucer. There's no question in my mind that she did see a flying saucer. Now, the big question to me is what that flying saucer was. That I cannot tell you because this was the reality that my mother saw.
And you do have a video about that, your mother's sighting on your YouTube channel. So I just want to point that out. I noticed that, and that is incredible that she reached out to you and shared that with you. That's important to have that knowledge, especially from a family member. And so what you I mean, you were involved with NICAP, as you said, and APRO and things. And when you came over to the United States, how did your involvement change, if at all, with these organizations? Did you become more involved, or did you break away? What was the path there in the early 70s?
Well, in the early 70s, I was still fascinated with the UFO phenomenon. But towards the end of the 1970s, my concept of this entire phenomenon started to change because until that time, I had, and I was convinced that this UFO phenomenon was the evidence of physical extraterrestrial visitation of physical extraterrestrial spacecraft. But towards the end of 1970s, I started devouring books by John A. Keel and folks like Dr. Jacques Vallée, and they wrote many new amazing books that overturned this so-called extraterrestrial hypothesis theory and opened up a new angle of this phenomenon. And so after the late 1978, I was still a believer in the UFO phenomenon, which I still am. I believe that this phenomenon is real, no question about it. But I began to embrace the idea that there's more to this phenomenon than what people believe, and so I became a supporter of the uh, you know rather the extra dimensional intervention of this phenomenon. And so, yes, and throughout the 1990s, even though I started getting involved in things like Area 51 and the so-called Dulce base investigations, I still maintained, and I'm still maintaining even right now, that this phenomenon, the UFO phenomenon, is real, but it, I think the origin of this phenomenon is not what we call physical, but paraphysical intrusion into our physical dimension by sentient paraphysical entities that dwell in this humongous cosmos.
And it is interesting to, over time, the more you read and the more you learn, the more people you're exposed to, the more your thoughts change on the subject. And I know that you have been very, forthright about calling out people that are not on the up and up, who are using the subject to make money or to sow, discontent, to promote conspiracy theories that could potentially, that are dangerous to our democracy here. And so let's talk a little bit about like Area 51 and what like your first time there, because wasn't there a conference there that you attended way back when, and George Knapp and John Lear were there, if I'm remembering?
Yes, that's true. In 1991, a group of us, including a friend of mine, Gary Schultz, organized the first time ever conference right at the so-called Little Alien, right near Area 51. This was in 1991, and this conference drew about roughly about 90 people, including George Knapp, um, including people like even Bill Cooper was there, and Lincoln County Sheriff was there, and John Lear was there, and a whole bunch of people, including Mr. Bob Lazar, came to attend this first time ever so-called a need to know seminar. And there was no speaker at that conference except for my colleague Gary Schultz and myself. People like Anthony J. Hilda was there too. So it was one of the most amazing small conference that was held right in the town of Rachel, Nevada. And 1991 was just very, it was just the opening of the new era of the Area 51 conspiracy. And so it was just such a tremendous experience that was there. And so, Gary Shields and I continued holding this ultimate need to know seminar at the Little Alien. And in 1993, we held even a larger conference right at the large parking lot at the Little Alien. So in 1993, believe it or not, there were at least about 150 people at the conference, including Bob Lazar. We invited Bob Lazar to speak at this conference in 1993. And what's interesting about this conference was that Joe Travis, the owner of the Little Alien in Rachel, he had borrowed a huge military tent from the base. He told us that the base lent him this humongous military tent with about 200 chairs. And so he had set up this huge tent, and at least 150 people came to this 1993 Need to Know seminar, and it was reported. In fact, a reporter from LA Times joined us and listened to Bob Lazar's claims, and other people spoke, of course, but it was an unforgettable conference, no question about it.
Wow. And so did you, in 91, when all of these people, came together, when all of you came together, did you notice that, were George Knapp and Bob Lazar familiar with each other? Did they know each other before that point?
Well, I'm sure, yes, because George Knapp already knew Bob Lazar by that time. In fact, they started knowing each other from 1989, along with John Lear and other folks. So, yes, George Knapp was familiar with Bob Lazar. And what happened was, I tell you, while Gary Shields was making a speech in that meeting in 1991 at the Little Alien, Bob Lazar was in the kitchen, and we could hear Bob Lazar laughing in the kitchen, along with the owner of the Little Alien, Mrs. Travis. And so to me, it was a little strange that Bob Lazar never spoke at that conference, and he was just there. But when Gary Schultz was speaking, Bob Lazar, I could hear him laughing out loud in the kitchen. And so I thought it was very, very strange. There was a lot of strange things about Mr. Lazar. And one of the strange things about Mr. Lazar that I have experienced in my life took place in 1990, when I took a team of Japanese television crew for the first time to his house. Gene Huff introduced us to Bob Lazar, and we had, it was on a Wednesday morning, February the 21st, 1990. So we did a 3 hour interview at Mr. Bob Lazar's house. Of course, Mr. Bob Lazar didn't want to come with us that evening to go to the place that he was talking about, to watch the test flight of what he claimed. But during the interview, I noticed something very strange about Mr. Bob Lazar, and that is that when we went to his house, did a 3 hour interview, I had the impression that his house was not really furnished. It seemed to me that it was not lived in daily. And another strange thing was that there were two men that sat right next to Lazar, Mr. Lazar, constantly seating. And when Mr. Lazar took a break to go to the kitchen or to the bathroom, these two guys walked with him. And so to me, it was strange, no question about it. And one of the guys had a black equipment of something, communication like device. And so anytime Mr. Lazar took a break, he walked with him in the house. So my conclusion at that time was that I had a feeling that he was being watched. That's all I can say. It was a strange interview.
Wow. That is very odd. What did the gentlemen that were accompanying him, what did they look like? What were they dressed like? What was,
I would say they were just dressed regular casual clothing, but their actions were really strange to me.
wow. And over the years, if obviously you don't necessarily believe in his story, give us more information about that and your kind of investigation into Lazar and his claims about Area 51.
Well, no question in my mind that from 1990, I took many other people to the perimeters of Area 51, and I took a lot of journalists over there to the perimeters of Area 51 in the early 1990s. But over those years, I came to the conclusion that there was nothing alien about Area 51. And so I came to the conclusion by the mid 1990s that Area 51 was a very important military research, development and test area for weapon systems integrated with avionics. And so I came to the conclusion was that Area 51 is an important place for our national defense. And I still believe that. I don't think there's anything alien about Area 51. And so, what was the role of Mr. Lazar? It's very hard to say, but I believe that the Air Force and defense contractors benefited from all these years, even now. They benefited from the people's constant association of Area 51 to aliens or alien technology. And the benefit of those kind of beliefs among the public is that it's a laughter curtain that was created so that anybody who tries to, go deep into the Area 51 research is really a laughing stock. So, in a way, it succeeded to the benefit of the Air Force or the defense contractors. So, yes, one more thing is that in 1988, I was reading Aviation and Aviation Week and Space Technology magazine, which I used to read. And so in one issue of 1988, in the October, I forgot the date, but one of the October issues of Aviation Week and Space Technology magazine, exactly on page 51, there was a full page color photo of a portrait of an alien on page 51. And on the opposite page was an advertisement by Amoco Company, which at that time was developing some kind of a stealth coating technology. And it was an advertisement that said that now we have come up with new technologies that could drastically alter the industry. And so to me, it was very strange. And, of course, that photo of the alien was not an actual photo of an actual alien, but it was like a doll or something, statue. But it was, again, there was a symbolism of 51.
Isn't that fascinating? How the powers that be used this subject to hide, things. I mean, and that's great. It's worked clearly.
Yes.
It's funny because I live, I'm in Utah and I live here. We've got Dugway Proving Ground, which is, there's a lot going on now, and we have a large aerospace and defense contractor community here that does a lot of things. But when you go to, I guess there's a gift shop when you go to the base, and you can get, actually, if I've got, no, I don't think, I've got a little Dugway Proving Ground.
Yes.
Area 52.
Oh, yes.
And so, I mean, you can, get that at, buy it at Dugway. So obviously they're using, again, that's not as widely known as Area 51, but I mean, they can use that, and, giggle factor and different things. It's really fascinating.
That's true. And by the way, in the late 1980s, those were the years when Russia and China was trying to get information about stealth technology, and so was it a coincidence that this thing came around late 1980s? I don't know. It's very strange. But as far as the UFO phenomenon is concerned, there's no doubt in my mind that even though we have not found any documentary, physical, credible evidence whatsoever that a physical extraterrestrial biological entity in a physical extra spacecraft of any kind, not even one solid evidence have come up, even now. But that does not mean that we are being intruded by possibly non-physical or even paraphysical entities that seem to be able to materialize instantly in our dimension. So, this is a very important matter to me because while I've investigated Area 51 and came to the conclusion that there's no alien technology over there, so does the same thing as my investigation on the alleged Dulce base, underground base conspiracy in New Mexico. I came to the similar conclusion that as of now, there is even no physical, tangible evidence that there is a physical underground alien laboratory in or around Dulce, New Mexico. Not even one. But yet, people who reside in Dulce area, even now, from time to time, report their mysterious experience of they're encountering strange things such as what they seem to believe as Bigfoot, as well as their report of strange lights in the sky of Dulce, as well as the report of the flight of military helicopters occasionally over Dulce, hovering around when Dulce is not even a military base, and it's so far from the closest military base, which is in Colorado. But these are some of the things that made me come to the conclusion that while there is no physical evidence of an underground base in Dulce, there's plenty of circumstantial evidences of people who tell their personal experience of experiencing something they are convinced are supernatural or even paranormal, or better term for me is paraphysical.
And so, and I mean, that reminds me of, the infamous Skinwalker Ranch and things. And from my perspective, looking at this and having researched it for a long time, I think that, sometimes you can seed ideas into a community and you can watch how that information spreads and how people can come to believe that they're witnessing things that aren't necessarily paranormal. And it's very interesting to see, and I think that probably has happened, as you mentioned, in places like Area 51 when people go on the perimeter, or in Dulce. But I mean, how do you feel about that? Do you think there is some sort of psychological operation at play that would be seeding information into communities in these places?
No question in my mind. In my opinion, is that the American military uh, is aware of strange paranormality or paraphysical phenomenon that seems to exist in certain locations, such as at Dulce, New Mexico. And so the United States military and the Pentagon has always been interested in researching these places because they are also convinced that there are things happening in the world that cannot be proven by empirical scientific method. And so it's a great opportunity for the Defense Department to involve themselves in these places and even test some kind of psyops program, because these areas, especially the areas inhabited by Native American folks, is filled with Native American spiritual beliefs and cultural beliefs that borderline on the paranormal. And so it's a great location to conduct even some kind of parapsychological operations. And in fact, a friend of mine, the late David Valdez, who used to be the New Mexico State Patrol officer who was in charge of the Dulce, New Mexico area for many years, since the early 1980s to the 1990s. He was placed by the state of New Mexico to investigate the strange goings on at Dulce. But his conclusion was that there's nothing strange about Dulce. There are no aliens in Dulce. But his conclusion was that the government may have involved themselves in testing some kind of psyops over there by bringing things like drones and things like that. Because in the early 1980s, they were just coming out with new drones technology, and they may have used some of these prototype drones to even stage some kind of a fake type of an extraterrestrial thing to unsuspected Native Americans who were convinced that they were seeing some kind of flying saucer over their But that was the conclusion of the late Gabe Valdez, who was the state officer in charge of that area. But I can't say with 100% surety that that was the case, but I won't be surprised to know that they may have conducted that kind of psychological operations, benefiting from the local people's deep-seated spiritual beliefs in the paranormal.
Yeah, thank you. And that's the conclusion I've definitely come to believe with regard to the special ranch in Utah. Here, it's the whole thing is so interesting, and it's interesting how you mentioned there are places that yeah that could potentially happen, and that is unfortunate because I think there are good people that kind of go down a rabbit hole and lose their footing, I think, and it's not healthy mentally when that takes place. So that is an unfortunate side effect of whatever is going on, for
Yes,
sure.
no question about there in this UFO field. There are lots of people who go into the extremes and off tangents, and later become mentally, unstable. And so we have to be very careful, and we have to always have our 2 feet on the ground when we're dealing with this strange subject. And so that is my belief. I am a believer that there are conspiracies. There are real conspiracies, but I'm also aware that there are fake conspiracies, and some people are so obsessed with conspiracy theories that they are brainwashed. And unfortunately, in this great nation of America right now, there are so many folks that have been brainwashed by unfounded theories and unfounded, beliefs of all kinds. And this was exactly what the late, great Carl Sagan warned years ago before he passed away. He warned that America must have, stress in scientific education, and not be swayed by pseudoscience and things that cannot be proven. And so, his warning still is very applicable even today. In fact, more so today, because America is becoming a country filled with people that are brainwashed by these unfounded conspiracy theories. And I, by the way, am not a conspiracy theorist, but I am a conspiratologist who simply studies how beliefs in conspiracy theories can change society. So, I'm glad to say that a filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker, just completed this short documentary called The Conspiratologist, which features me in that movie. And so this
It's
movie,
great. Thank you for sending that to me. I've really enjoyed watching that.
oh yes, this movie is, it's not an extreme movie, but it's a neutral on the conspiracy theories, because it's my belief that there are conspiracies, no question in my mind, because conspiracies have existed for a long time. In fact, since time immemorial, whenever two or more persons cause or plan something that is detrimental to another person or even large groups of persons, there is conspiracy. And for example, the assassination of Julius Caesar by 66 at least senators at that time, that was definitely a real conspiracy. So real conspiracies exist, but also there are things called uh, strange delusional conspiracies that people seem to believe. And so I'm so grateful that these two documentary filmmakers uh, decided to do this 30-minute documentary explaining how I got into all of this.
And where can people find that if they want to watch it?
Well, if they want to watch it, they can freely watch it simply by going to my blog site, because the first item that's on my blog site is about this movie. And if you go to my blog site, which is simply noriohayakawa.wordpress.com. So if you go to noriohayakawa.wordpress.com, the first thing you'll see is about the movie, and there's a link to that movie that you can push, and you can watch the entire 35-minute movie.
I would recommend that because I, like I said, I just really enjoyed watching that and having that glimpse to your life and your thoughts on things. And I do absolutely agree with you about conspiracy theories. I mean, some conspiracies are real, but there is a big push, and there has been for the past few years. I mean, decades. I mean, since JFK assassination, different moments in history where there have been conspiracy theories that have been promoted, and now we've got all sorts of things that are floating out there that aren't verified, that are being used for political means to sway groups of people. And I think it's just been incredibly damaging to our country, to families' lives, to individuals. It's unfortunate people don't fact check and they're willing to believe something just because they see it on the internet.
Exactly, you said it right, because those people who are brainwashed into believing all these nonsense are what I call real sheeple. SHEEPLE. The real sheeple are those who are brainwashed and they don't want to study anything else. They are constantly immersed in conspiracy theories, and so that is the basis for the growth of mental problems among a lot of folks in America. And but my final conclusion is that there's a way to prevent us from becoming a part of this lunacy, and that is to have good discernment. We must all have good discernment of what is true and what is not true, what is real and what is not real. And we have to diligently search any topic from multi angle, and to make sure that you are not drawn into this magnet of lunacy. And so the important thing to me, Erica, is that each of us must ask that we be protected and shielded from delusion. And the only way to do it is to ask, well, I don't want to become religious, but to ask God for discernment, to ask God for the knowledge of truth, and to ask God for indwelling of His Spirit in our body and mind, so we can be more discernful of things. And that is the only way to protect us in these perilous times that we are living in. And I'm convinced that there's no question that we are living in perilous times.
Absolutely. And it's really, I mean, daily I'm having conversations with my friends and clients and things about some of the things taking place. And it's so sad how, we've allowed ourselves to become so divisive, I mean, and literally families are being torn apart. And it's just sad. We're, I mean, a few years ago we could have conversation and be grounded and look at another person's point of view. But now it's just, we're in there's a real problem. We've given, unfortunately, platform for people to abuse other people and behave in ways that I'm sure maybe 10 years ago these people never would have envisioned themselves behaving. It's crazy. And I think for me, looking back at the history of the UFO, uh, culture, I always wonder, how deep was the role of this kind of playing the community for its own, for other people's gain. And did the UFO community, the conspiracy theory community, was that like a testing ground? And then did we have people that could use that information and then parse that out to the general public? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, you just said it so right. I can't add to that because you made a statement that it's very applicable to everything that's happening right now. And like I said, Erica, that I'm a believer that there is good in this world, but there's also bad in this world. Likewise, my belief is that there are good, unseen spiritual entities in this cosmos, which I believe are the majority. In other words, two-thirds of all cosmic sentient entities are benevolent types, and are they sometimes protect us. In fact, most of the time they protect us. I call them maybe part of the what I call as guardian angels. But the ones that are causing problems, the entities that are dark and fallen, they are one third of the entire cosmic entities, and they are the malevolent ones, and they are the ones that are deceiving people and pretending to be advanced, alien emissaries from advanced civilization in outer space. And so these are only about a third. So that is just my crazy spiritual belief. But I am so happy that we who try to ask for discernment from God are protected. And so this is the only way. Spiritual protection is needed as a shield to live in this crazy world that is getting crazier and crazier every day.
That is true. I think it's it is, we're living in some interesting times. And I want to ask you, and hopefully you can be here with me for a little bit longer, because I've got a list of questions I really want to talk with you about. And I think, this is a great segue to talk a little bit about the end times kind of conspiracy and the Antichrist and things like that, and how that kind of intercepts with the UFO community.
Definitely, this is one of the most important aspect of this entire subject, and this is, are we living in the end time period? I'd like to believe that we are. And how this belief in the end time period came actually after World War II. After World War II in America, uh, you know, uh, a lot of people started embracing some beliefs, fascinating beliefs, by looking at the world events. And one of the most important world events that took place after World War II started in 1948, when the state of Israel, or Israel, became a nation for the first time in more than 2,000 years. And this 1948 rebirth of the state of Israel added much needed fuel for America's so-called evangelical Christian community, because that was the catalyst for their belief that finally this the birth of Israel is the indication that we are now living in the end time period in which an antichrist will appear soon and will create a one world order. And this belief became very popular also in 1967 when a book was published entitled The Late Great Planet Earth, written by Hal Lindsey. And so, this publication of this book, The Late Great Planet Earth, was very significant because in 1967, Israel captured the ancient city of Jerusalem for the first time, and this added another fuel to the belief that we're living in the end time period. Now, you know, and so, well, personally, I do believe that we are living in the end time period because this belief is essential to those who believe in Bible prophecies. And I do believe in the Bible prophecy that in the end time period, there will be a new world system or the new world order that will be established. And in the 1990s, I did also promote this New World Order conspiracy. And I even toured in the United States to various locations in the 1990s, promoting this idea that the New World Order is right here and that very soon the Antichrist will appear and will create a one world government led by, the coming Antichrist. Now, do I still believe this? Yes, as a Christian, we must always believe that this is always possible. However, realistically speaking, do I believe that this is going to take place right now? Well, as much as I would like to believe that the New World Order is coming, at this point in time, I do not think that it's going to happen right away because, first of all, this world that we're living in is so much in disarray, so much disorganized. There's no organization at all in this world that we're living today. It's so messed up. There's not going to be a new world order established in this kind of an environment. But as a Christian, we always have to believe in the Bible prophecy. And so that is my Bible prophecy that eventually this whole thing will come out. This will be a reality, but I cannot say that it's going to happen right now.
And it's interesting to me because I look at some of the things that have been, I mean, you look at people like David Ike and things, people like that have promoted kind of the New World Order, and as we have seen with QAnon and things, and sometimes I wonder if the people that are promoting these stories and pushing that forward aren't actually the people that are responsible for some of these things. It's a great way to distract and things, but I just, I really, I don't know. I think it's a trip. What are your thoughts on David Ike?
Well, I think he came up with a brilliant concept about all of this, and he did mention me briefly in his book called The Biggest Secret. And I read that book, and he mentioned me because I was in the 1990s talking about the possibility that in the future, uh, a secret elitist global cabal could stage a fake extraterrestrial event to cause panic and that caused clamoring for the public to for the new world order to fight this external threat of alien invasion. And so, he mentioned me in his book. But this idea was also promoted by people such as the late William Bill Cooper, who wrote a fascinating book called Behold a Pale Horse in the 1990s. And so people like William Cooper and even people like myself in the 1990s, late 1990s, began to promote that someday a secret global cabal will create a fake extraterrestrial event and to create an external threat so that people will be convinced that we are being invaded by aliens and that we need a strong global government to fight this external threat. And, some people think that this is a silly idea, but I think it's not impossible.
Well, but as you mentioned, I mean, the world is in such disarray right now. It's hard to imagine that any government, I mean, that could even be possible right now, that there could be unity among, different nations and things. So it's really fascinating. But I mean, David Ike did kind of go off the kooky train there, I think, with some of his ideas and conspiracy theories. So he's an interesting person, for sure. And so, I want to, because you kind of touched on some of the evangelical Christians and things that have been on the periphery of some of these things, and let's talk a little bit about like the John Birch Society and their role in some of the conspiracy theories.
Sure, this is a very important thing. After World War II, Americans started embracing a lot of theories, especially, as I said, in 1948, after the establishment of the State of Israel. Um, a lot of evangelical folks in America started believing that we're living in the end times and that a new world order is about to come. And this idea was embraced by America's evangelical Christian community, which even today wields a lot of influence in American politics. And organizations such as John Birch Society became very popular in the 1950s and 1960s. The John Birch Society was created by people who had extreme nationalistic viewpoint, and you know they started publishing a lot of pamphlets about the dangers of the American government, which they thought were being invaded by leftist extremist people who are planning to overtake this government and create a socialist communistic state. And this idea, believe it or not, is still being held by some folks in America, especially by those who believe in strange theories such as the QAnon conspiracy. But fortunately, the John Birch Society has gone down in the past 25 years or 30 years. It's nothing right now, but those were the seeds that were planted in those years that later grew to the growth of right-wing style conspiracy culture in America. And so my belief is that unfortunately many so-called Christian churches, organized religions, Christian churches, are being affected by these conspiracy theories, these patriotic, so-called patriotic right-wing conspiracy beliefs. And this is quite unfortunate as far as I'm concerned, because, there are politicians who take advantage of the strength of American Christian evangelical community. And these politicians manipulate the beliefs of evangelical Christian communities and they manipulate these groups and they take advantage of the beliefs of these groups to their political advantage. And that is what's happening right now.
It is, and it's really it's a sad thing to watch. So many wonderful people, you go down that rabbit hole, and you can get swept up in these things. And I just think for me, I've tried to address that on most of my shows because I'm just so alarmed at that, and I'm alarmed at the way the UFO community seems to not have any. They don't know when to put the brakes on, and we can look back historically at some of the people involved. Back in the '60s, '70s. You've got people in NICAP, Major Kehoe. Things like that, figures like that were very much kind of Senator Barry Goldwater, people like that were very had different belief systems, and it's that we've got to distrust the government. We're sowing these seeds of conspiracy, and everybody better get their guns, and there's a war that is going to take place and things like that. And that's just, I mean, that's unfortunate, and that I don't even know why or how that could be, even how we could even involve that in the search for extraterrestrial life. That's pretty insane to me, honestly.
You said it so right, Erica, because many people innocently get involved in UFO studies and ufology, and then later on they go into the extreme theories, and then they become go into conspiracy theories, and they go off tangent, and so that's what's happening. Because there are lots of UFO researchers who claim to be UFO researchers who initially, with the good intention of investigating UFOs, year after year, then they start going delving into weird theories, conspiracy theories, extreme theories, and that's how they get duped into this whole delusion or delusive, beliefs. And so it's a misfortune because many people initially, yes, they study UFOs and they're excited about it, and but without any, good discernment, they fall into the trap of extreme beliefs, and then they eventually go into crazy theories that then they get brainwashed by all kinds of nonsensical conspiracy beliefs.
Absolutely. And I just, we see eye to eye on this. And I think it is, when I look back, I'm, like I mentioned, the wonderful archive that I have here. I've got magazines and periodicals that date back to the late, '40s. And when you go through them, it's apparent, especially, in the late '80s, '90s. I mean, you've got UFO magazines that are talking about, oh, they're going to round everybody up and put them in FEMA, you know, camps, and we better join that militia, or there are different things that are put out there, and you've got here's a UFO article, but then we're going to throw this in there, and then we're going to make you distrust that, and then we're going to I mean, it's just it's just amazing to look back at the history and see how this whole subject has just been poisoned with some of these ideas. And what at the end of the day is this, I mean, why do you think that is? Do you think I mean, it's obviously probably a multitude of different things, either people that are promoting things that are maybe delusional themselves, maybe there's a bit of, disinformation involved. There are people that are capitalizing on this for political or financial gain. But I mean, why do you think people would insert different narratives into this subject?
Well, the important thing is to realize that perhaps there could be a, well, hidden agenda that is promoted by, uh, well, entities that we can't identify, that is steering the whole people and the whole nation into this direction for purposes unknown at this time. And, my theory is that it started happening around 1947 with the establishment of the CIA and the establishment of the NSA. And, so 1947 was a significant year from which all these strange beliefs seem to have, or the seeds of which were planted. And it's hard to say who had planted all these things to sensitize us or to even brainwash us into extreme beliefs of this kind. But it's my belief that, yes, 1947 was a significant year because it was a year in which the whole idea of UFOs in modern era started with the sighting of Kenneth Arnold on June 24th, 1947, and also the so-called Roswell story sprung up in the same year, 1947. And, to me, it may not be just one person or a group of people or a group of organizations. It could even be some hidden unseen force that has drawn us for some strange unseen reason into this whole idea. And that is a very even strange, even to me, because I am a believer that we're living in a strange world, no question about it. This world is mysterious. Anybody that says there's nothing strange about this world is a lunatic, because this world itself is strange, no question about it. There are things that cannot be explained in this world, and so even life and death cannot be explained. We don't even know for real what reality is really, And so I always try to have an open mind in all of this. But as you said so very well, that we have to be very careful with the tendency that many UFO researchers and many people who are into ufology tend to be swayed into an extreme direction that involves weird beliefs that can affect individuals and can affect society. And that's exactly what's happening right now.
And it's really it's fascinating and frightening all at the same time. And I look at information warfare, and I've been doing a lot of research on information warfare, psychological operations, different ways that companies, private contractors can gather up our information, profile us psychologically, and then feed us information via Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, wherever we are on social media, and how we just really need to be thoughtful and realize that just because you see a link on Facebook that leads to an alleged news outlet, that doesn't make it a credible news source. There we have to be on top of our game and do fact checking. It's there are lots of, even in the UFO community, I've seen different news sites, I use that term loosely, that have popped up, and you look at, okay, where did they come from? Who's promoting them? What message are they sending? And we need to just look a little bit more carefully at the larger picture of the message that's coming out, because as we've seen, in the past week with Alex Jones' verdict, there are a lot of people that make millions of dollars promoting information that is not accurate and dangerous. And so we have to really be careful of that in the UFO field for sure.
Exactly. And this is why, Erica, that I'm so happy and I'm so privileged today that you have invited me to your program, because this was just such a one of the best interviews I ever had, because
Thank you.
it deals with reality, and it deals with this, this whole idea. And there are very few interviewers that accept things like that, what have been telling you. And I'm so privileged and honored, Erica, that today that you have invited me to your very important segment today.
Thank you. That means a lot to me because it is nice to find people that feel the same. There's so many wonderful people in the UFO community, and I believe that they, or even people that, want to get involved with conspiracy theories. I mean, it's exciting, to think that you're onto something, to think you're going to be the first person to, make a discovery. I mean, there's something very alluring about the subject. And I really hate to see good people go down a path that is destructive. And I've seen that. And I've personally experienced that as well with my own journey through the UFO world and meeting a cast of characters that are a little off the rails. To say the least, and it's hard to pull yourself back after you go through some of these things and meet some of these characters who are very adept at promoting absolute nonsense. And I want to ask you, in your time in the subject and being around some of these people, what were some things that were the most kind of alarming to you as far as the messages that were being sent by the UFO community?
Well, as I stated many times on my blog sites and so on, I got to know lots and lots of people beginning in the 1990s that, um, you know, they were good people, no question about it. They were good people, but they were deceived. And one of the people, like Anthony J. Hilder, he was a good friend. He was a great guy, but a great friend doesn't mean that his beliefs are great. And so, I've gotten known people like William Bill Cooper, and he was a good guy. He tried to be a good guy, but eventually I think he went into extremism. But I'm so glad that he did admit in 1999, 2 years before he passed away, 2 years before he passed away, he admitted that he may have been given misinformation or disinformation, and he may have been used. So at least he admitted that, and so I give credit to people like William Bill Cooper. And so I've known lots of people like Ted Gunderson, who was a former FBI chief agent in charge in Los Angeles in the 1990s. He started, after he retired, he started he started associating himself with the militia movement, and he did lots of research about strange groups and so on. But basically, these people, even people like Jordan Maxwell, he was a friend of mine. He was a good person per se, but I think that just because you're a good person doesn't mean that you are, uh, that anybody can actually fall into trap. And so that's what I want to say, that all these years I have had lots of friends that were into all of these things, but many people, many friends of mine have passed away, and I am still kicking and alive, and I thank God every day for giving a breath of life every day, because I am still not sure if tomorrow morning I will still be alive, So, I just live moment by moment every single day, trying to enjoy this once in a lifetime life in this particular world. So, I do my best and I pray every single day that tomorrow will be a good day. So that's my philosophy.
I love that. No, I think that's good because sometimes it's so hard to get. I mean, you look at the news and you get caught up in the doom and gloom and different things, and so it is important to just take time out and make music or listen to music or hang out with your friends and do something that is positive because we are still here, and that's a great thing. I really, it's life is beautiful. It's so, and I feel very fortunate that I've had the life that I have, too, and I always am thankful for that. But I want to, and I'm sorry, and I love talking to you. I knew that this was going to be a really great interview because you've done so much, and I want to ask you, like, what was like a major for you when you were promoting things, and you mentioned you were talking about the new world order and different things. What was a turning point for you when you started to doubt some of the things that you had maybe previously felt?
Well, Erica, the turning point came around 10 years ago, during which time I started realizing that many people are simply into this to gain fame or to make money. And so I came to realize that uh, I came to realize that there is this thing called the UFO industry and even a paranoia industry. So I started researching a lot of things from a realistic viewpoint, and I came to this conclusion that yes, I think we're all have been duped into this kind of delusion. And well, I don't like the word use the word delusion, but let's admit it. There is a big delusion in the communities. For example, the UFO community and the conspiracy community, and so on. And so I came to that realization about 10 years ago. And my mission now is, with the remaining few years of my life, I will do my best to bring logic and reason and common sense into all of these things that we're talking about.
That is awesome. That's great. And it's interesting to see, because I know, I mean, I've got some wonderful friends that I've met in this subject, and it is interesting to see, as a lot of people in the subject that get into it, they have a belief system, and they're going to believe that until the day they die, and it's almost like, well, I can't give that up and look at reality, and that's unfortunate. But then there are people that, or maybe I guess that's good for them, but I mean, there are people that go through this process. It's a cathartic kind of almost like a shamanic dismemberment. You're going through this journey where things you once believed are just kind of stripped out from underneath you, and then you have to put the pieces back together and then make sense of what you learn. And it's been, for me personally, that's been an interesting road. It's not where I would have thought I would have been 10 years ago when I got into this publicly, but here I am, and I feel the same way that you do. It's like we have, there's a mission for us to make sure that we're promoting the truth and hopefully preventing other people from going down rabbit holes that maybe both you and I have gone down. And, just because there is something genuine to study, and it's like, why is there all this garbage that we've allowed to fester in the community? That's one thing I've asked many people over the years, many people who are, speakers, the main people on the circuit, and I've asked them, why are we allowing this type of thing to happen in the UFO community? Why are we allowing other people to bully people? Why are we allowing disinformation? And, the answer has been from all of them, well, this is the way it's always been, and it's always going to stay that way. And for me, I just think, really, that's a really lazy answer.
Yes.
When
So, well, you said it so well, Erica, and unfortunately, I will have to, depart right now. But
Yes.
it has been such a great pleasure and honor to be on your program.
Yes, thank you. I knew I would just was I've been so excited about this, and I look forward to, hopefully I can have you on again, and we can just touch base and hopefully give people the right information. So I really, really, really appreciate this. This has been fun. So thank you very much, and I will be posting the link to your blog, and definitely everybody go out and watch the wonderful 35-minute video that Norio was in. It's delightful. I love it. So thank you for all of your work. Thank you for a wonderful interview, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you so much, Erica. God bless you, and we'll see you and talk to you
Okay,
some other
thank
day.
you.
Thank
All
you.
right, take care. Thank you. Bye-bye. And I want to just say to everyone at UFO Classified, thanks again for supporting the show. I want to say a big thanks to Mario, as always. And this was a pre-recorded show. I'm really happy to have done that. And so I'm sorry, but because of that, I can be more active in chat, So that is really cool. You can go to ufoclassified.com to become a Patreon and support the show. We are making some good progress in that regard. And I also am in the process of setting up a nonprofit for the archive, and I am looking forward to getting more work into the archive. So if you know anyone that has done research in the UFO topic, then please make sure, if they are thinking about donating their files, please send them my way, because I have a beautiful commercial space here. I have great infrastructure, and I have obviously a lot of passion about preserving history and giving the public information about this. So send them my way, and I look forward to sharing more information about that. And I also want to just point to Jack Brewer's great blog. He recently did a blog on a FOIA request that he did, and we were kind of joining forces on that for information on a certain network. So you can go to Jack Brewer's blog spot and check that out, the UFO Trail. And I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Again, thank you, thank you. Next Friday, I'm going to have Josh and Artemis on the show, and they are fantastic. I love them. They have a great show out on YouTube, and they ask the right questions. They're really just cool people. So I look forward to that. And again, thank you for always being so wonderful and respectful. You guys are the best. Take care. And we will definitely catch you next week. Okay.